This is the story of David and Goliath, one of the most well-known stories in all of human history. It's a story about how a young shepherd was able to defeat a giant warrior who had been terrorizing his people for months. But it's also a story about something else. A story about how sometimes in life we have to face our fears and take a leap of faith. It was a time of war between Israel and their neighboring nation of the Philistines. And every morning, early in the morning, just before battle commenced, there would always be a lull in the fighting. A champion from each side would step out into the no-man's land between the two armies. They would then engage in single combat, and whichever side won this duel would boost the morale of their troops and often lead them to victory in the overall battle. For months, the Israelites were at a loss, though. Each morning they would send out their champion, but each time he would come back defeated and demoralized. Eventually, King Saul heard the complaints of his men as they returned home after another defeat, and he asked them what was wrong. And when he heard that it was because of the Philistine champion, Goliath of Gath, Saul was furious. He summoned his warriors to the courtyard of his palace and told them he would give his daughter in marriage to the man who would defeat Goliath and kill him. He offered great riches and land, and all the warriors' hearts were lifted up. But when they went out to fight Goliath the next day, they all came back defeated, and no one volunteered to face the giant the following day. But one day, there was a young shepherd named David. He wasn't called to the palace until his older brother Eliab had been sent out to fight Goliath and had come back having lost. As soon as David heard the taunts and mockery of the Philistines, he became angry. What right did these people have to mock his God? He went straight to his father and told him that he was going to Jerusalem to get some flour and meat for his brothers who had been fighting against the Philistines. But his father didn't even notice that David was gone. He was too worried about his other sons. David slipped out of camp unnoticed and made his way over to the battlefield. When Goliath began his daily taunts, David heard him and came running through the crowd of onlookers. When he got close enough, he heard the giant say, "Why do you come at me? Am I not a Philistine? Is your king Saul? Why does he send you out to fight me?" David replied, "Who are you, giant, to scoff at my ranks? I am coming at you in the name of the God of Israel, who has sent me to defeat you." At first, Goliath laughed at David, but when he saw that David was serious, he became angry. He thought he could easily kill the young man, and so he hurled his spear at him. But David dodged out of the way. Then he picked up 5 stones and put them in his bag, slinging one in his hand. He then waited for the giant to come closer, and then he swung his sling and hit the giant square in the forehead. The stone tore through Goliath's helmet and smashed into his head. The giant stumbled backward, clutching his head, and fell to the ground where he lay groaning and never moved again. David ran over and plunged his sword into the neck of the giant, cutting off his head. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, the whole army collapsed and fled the battlefield. The Israelites then chased them down and killed many of them, and the rest retreated back to their own country. So David, the youngest and least likely hero, had saved his people and defeated the greatest warrior of the enemy army. After that day, he would go on to become the second king of Israel. But why is this story still relevant today? Well, when David was told by King Saul that he was going to marry his daughter and inherit great wealth if he defeated Goliath, he must have felt a lot of pressure. But David knew that this was his calling and that he was chosen by God to defeat the giant. So he set his eyes on the prize and didn't let anything stand in his way. We can learn from David's example by being focused on our goals. Don't let distractions or setbacks get in your way. Like David, we all have unique abilities that we can use to achieve great things, and it's important to recognize those abilities and use them to our full potential. David was a young shepherd, but he was also a skilled warrior and marksman. He used his skills to defeat Goliath and save his people. Sometimes we may feel like underdogs, like David facing off against Goliath, but remember that it's not always about size or strength. It's also about heart, skill, and determination. David was smaller and weaker than Goliath, but he was more agile and had a better understanding of warfare. He used his slingshot, a simple tool that he was familiar with, to defeat the giant. So don't underestimate yourself or your abilities. Sometimes we may face challenges that seem impossible, but we can overcome them if we believe in ourselves and trust in our abilities. David never doubted that he could defeat Goliath. He believed in himself and his mission, and that gave him the strength to succeed. Sometimes we need to take risks in order to achieve our goals. David could have chosen to stay safe and hidden, but instead he risked his life to confront Goliath. He knew that he couldn't let fear or doubt control him if he wanted to succeed. And sometimes we need to be willing to step outside of our comfort zone. David was a shepherd, but he was also a warrior. He was willing to put aside his peaceful lifestyle and fight for his people when they needed him the most. He was brave enough to pick up a sword and shield and charge into battle. And sometimes we have to have faith. David knew that he had God on his side. He trusted in his faith and believed that God would help him defeat Goliath. This gave him the strength and courage to face the giant, knowing that he wasn't alone. There are so many times in our lives when we have to take a leap of faith. Maybe it's starting a new business or pursuing a new relationship. Whatever it is, we need to be willing to step outside of our comfort zone and trust that we can handle whatever comes our way. We need to have faith in ourselves and our abilities, even when things look bleak. As I end this video, I want you to remember that you are stronger than you think. You have the ability to achieve great things, and you shouldn't let anyone tell you otherwise. So if you're facing a challenge that seems like it's too big for you, remember the story of David and Goliath. Believe in yourself, trust in your abilities, and take the necessary risks to achieve your goals. And never forget that you have the power to overcome any obstacle. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.